Hello, and welcome to the Campus Technology Insider Podcast. I'm Rhea Kelly, Editor-in-Chief of Campus Technology, and your host. What skills will students need for the workforce of the future in an age dominated by artificial intelligence? In addition to basic computer science, data competencies, and the mathematics and statistics behind AI and machine learning, there are a range of social impacts to consider: AI risk, ethics, privacy, questions of bias, etc. All of the above are part of the curriculum at Dakota State University, a STEM-oriented institution with a focus on computer science, cybersecurity, and artificial intelligence. For this episode of the podcast, I spoke with DSU President José-Marie Griffiths about how her institution is preparing students for careers in AI. In addition to her experience in research, teaching, and higher education administration, Griffiths was a member of the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence, part of the 2019 John S. McCain National Defense Authorization Act. She has also served in presidential appointments to the National Science Board, the U.S. President's Information Technology Advisory Committee, and the U.S. National Commission on Libraries and Information Science. Here's our chat. One of the things that often comes up in conversations about AI is how students will need a new set of these skills to succeed in the world of work. So I wanted to ask how you see workforce skills changing in the face of these new technology developments.
Well, clearly they are in the process of changing, but they've also been in the process of changing for quite some time. Just to give you a little bit of background on Dakota State, we're really a special focus STEM institution, where our special focus is computer science, cybersecurity, and artificial intelligence, those areas. Now, we teach in other areas too, don't get me wrong, but this is a special focus, and we put a lot of our efforts into that. And we have about 3,300 students from associate degrees through to doctoral degrees. So why AI, right? That's the question. Well, AI has actually been around for decades, I know, because it was around before I was. And there have been recent developments in AI that, and the facilitating technologies for AI that have really brought AI to the forefront, particularly in the minds of the general public. And if we look at the headlines that have been in just about every media outlet recently, we know everybody's talking about AI, which is probably good. But DSU, we hired our first professor in artificial intelligence in 2016. And we developed 2 undergraduate degrees in artificial intelligence. So we have a Bachelor of Science in Artificial Intelligence, which is aligned with our computer science and cybersecurity program. And we have a bachelor's degree in Bachelor's of Business Administration in Artificial Intelligence, where you're focused on the application of artificial intelligence in different kinds of organizations, whether it be healthcare or just generally in IT organizations helping to support, finance, et cetera, et cetera. So our students, because they're so focused on technology, and we want to graduate students who are, as we call it, cyber savvy, whatever their discipline, it's important for students to really know and understand how artificial intelligence works, what it is, what it isn't, because people think it's a lot more than it is actually right now, and what it might become. So we think that we're preparing students to learn how algorithms work, how they can reflect bias, intended or unintended, the bias of their creators, how AI algorithms are trained. There's some sense that you have to have data to train them, and that can be brought into the system. How ongoing data are used, so the AI, the artificial intelligence, is learning in an ongoing way. I think there's an interesting thing that people need to think about, the role of the artificial intelligence and the role of the human in the loop, as it were, and how they work together and could work together, don't work together, whatever it is. The notions of risk. And then I do think for us in particular, because of the institution we are, I think there's a very symbiotic relationship between artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. So we need, in cybersecurity, we need artificial intelligence to deal with all the signals we're trying to manage, to try and detect anomalies in people's access to the systems and services and networks that we're running. At the same time, AI needs cybersecurity to protect their data flows, to protect the models and the algorithms from intrusion. So we see them going together, which is why we got involved very early, 2016, to say we can't keep doing cybersecurity unless we do AI, and we can't keep doing AI unless we keep doing cybersecurity. So we see those two, they're working in different directions. Now, in terms of our students, I classify them into three types. There are the students who will be AI developers, and those students are predominantly in our Beacon College of Computing and Cyber Sciences, which is where the technical artificial intelligence degree sits. There are those who are going to apply AI in their jobs, and that could be people like our business and information systems, but in our College of Education, they're looking at how to use artificial intelligence in the K through 12 environment and also in our arts and sciences program. And then we have those who need a general understanding of the capabilities and limitations, risks associated with AI, sort of the kind of thing you'd want your educated population to know about. So we have all three kinds of students on campus. So I break the audience out that way, and we give different things to different students.
So it sounds like you've defined perhaps specific AI competencies for those different categories of students. Could you talk more about those in more detail?
Yes. There are, of course, there are lots of them because AI, people always think AI is one thing, and of course it's multiple technologies, multiple applications of technology, etc. It's not one thing, but I like categorizing. Okay, so I've got sort of four types of competencies. You can see how my mind thinks. One is there's some basic computer science concepts that people need to understand. So data structures, programming for AI. I mean, there's certain kinds of programming languages for AI, like Prolog or Lisp. Understanding computer systems, understanding the design of algorithms, understanding the performance of algorithms, and optimization of algorithms. So that's a sort of basic computer science piece. Then we have a set of competencies around data. And what do you mean by data? Okay, so we could mean language, we could mean vision. So if you're trying to identify objects or trying to identify people or faces or whatever. In data, there's the notion of perception. What are we perceiving? What we think we see? The whole ideas about uncertainty, numbers and symbols, and so on. So data is a whole bunch of things too, depending on what you're trying to do. Then we have the sort of underlying mathematics and statistics. This is typically for both the developers of AI and to some extent some of those people applying AI and machine learning. So we teach discrete math, logic, theorem proving, probability and statistics, very, very important, optimization again, and encryption. So that's on the mathematical side. And then I have an area that I would call social impacts, the ethics associated with legal, regulatory regimes, privacy, how the technology is going to be implemented in and affect society in ways that hopefully are intended but aren't always. So I think there's an interesting thing with AI that goes a little bit beyond some of the basic technologies. We have some of these issues of social impacts in cybersecurity, but perhaps more extreme in AI. Because in cybersecurity, we're concerned about security, safety, privacy to some extent. But with AI and the way people seem to be using or wanting to use AI, there's some interesting phenomena in that the humans tend to want to vest the AI technology with more capability, more knowledge, more intelligence than it really has, and I would say ... today. Okay, today we don't have that level of intelligence. I mean, ChatGPT is really just a probabilistic model, guessing the probability of the next word and creating nice prose, I understand. And because it's nice prose and not the kind of prose that was developed in the late 60s and early 70s, people suddenly say, oh, yes, it sounds like me, or says it better than I could, or whatever. And so they vest that level in it. And that's I know you haven't asked me that, but that's where some of the difficulty lies in moving ahead. But certainly some of the societal implications, one way or the other, come out of that vesting of, oh, it must be more than I think it is because I don't understand how the widget works.
How do you combat those kind of misconceptions that students might have when they're vesting too much into what the technology can do?
Well, I think for students, we have to break it down into something that's understandable. So I like to go back to some simple things. What is the most publicly accessible low-level intelligence that's available? Search. And we all use search, right? We all use Google, Bing, or whatever we use. And we assume that we're getting a pretty accurate response, mainly because we're getting so much back. And when we ask a question from a system that sounds so knowledgeable, and let's face it, these chatbots typically are quite assertive in the way they present the answers, right? This is the answer, and then give you all sorts of context around it, which you assume is accurate. And so people then vest that information in them. And the danger is, of course, because the base the base corpus of knowledge that it was trained on is any piece of language. Let's face it. I always laugh that these things are very American oriented, and if I go to the UK, those bots have been trained on more British expression. But if you're training a large language model to get better at language, it really doesn't matter what you give it as long as it's good, coherent language. It doesn't matter whether it's actually accurate or not. It doesn't have to be true. So in scraping various data sets now, what we have are things that we know are untrue. We know that there are things on the internet, that there are multiple, there's fact and there's opinion and there's deliberate misinformation and there are malign campaigns from other countries and so on. So if you scoop all that up, as I say, it's fine for learning language and having better ways of its expressing itself. But if you're using it to answer questions, you have to be very careful about what corpus of knowledge was used to train it. And so now you have a double risk, right? You have the risk that we're vesting more intelligence in it than it does, and you have the risk that the basic input is not necessarily accurate, timely, etc., etc. And so that's the second risk on these things. So I would hope our students would learn and understand that a little bit, or be a little bit skeptical, and start really looking at what these systems are doing. And I'm so glad that these systems have started to hallucinate, because now it gives you a certain level of skepticism. And now, everybody says, well, should I use it or not? If we use narrow AI, which most AI is right now, with the exception of the language models and search, they're the only two very general things. If you use narrow AI, it's very, very good. AI can be very, very good at detecting patterns, and detecting patterns that the human can't see. The human is still very good at detecting things that the AI can't see. So actually, that relationship of one working with the other becomes important. And that's been the case in a lot of things. But let's say medical diagnoses. Medical diagnoses, would you actually allow an AI to diagnose somebody without you, the physician, ever going back and looking at the scans directly? I don't think so. I think you're going to want to check the scans and say, oh, this is what it says, let me see. Does that match my understanding of it? I also think that's a good way to use these chat boxes. So a while back, I was preparing for a short talk, and I came out with what I wanted to say. Here were my issues. I said I'd be a little controversial. Here are my 7 controversial issues. And then I did. Then I went and I said to ChatGPT, what are 7 controversial issues in AI? And it had 7 issues that were incorporated with mine, and I had a couple of extra ones that it didn't have. But I was using it just to say, did I miss something out? If, however, I had gone the other way and asked the chat box first, what are the issues, that would have framed my thinking. It would have boxed me out in some respects. If I were to say, oh, gosh, that's great, I don't need to do anything else. So when I think about dangers, I think about loss of our ability to know exactly what we're dealing with, not being free and open with our minds in a way, not perceiving what we want to perceive, in the artificial intelligence, assuming that it's accurate when it's not necessarily accurate. I think those are the risks we really have right now. And for some people, it might be easy to abdicate responsibility to a technology. And I think that's actually going to cause considerable concern.
Generative AI it sort of feels like creativity happening automatically, and yet using it can actually inhibit your own creativity by limiting your thinking. That's just kind of a interesting oxymoron.
Yeah, because we are who we are, we sort of leaned in. So when we saw some institutions were sort of banning the use of ChatGPT and concerns about plagiarism, we were leaning in to say, okay, this is around. We're a technology institution. How do we use it? How do we incorporate it more effectively into the curriculum so that our students are more aware, as I said, the pros and cons, so they can go out into the world and help advocate for the good applications and warn people about the negative implications. That's sort of who we are. So if you were talking to other institutions, they might have a different approach, but we are all about the technology, and we can't afford to sort of just dismiss it, because quite frankly, if we dismiss it, it's going underground. And if it's underground, it's in our cybersecurity space, as it were. It will be down there, the black market of everything.
Yeah, well, could you share some examples of how you've, what does it look like in practice, kind of utilizing or embracing, I guess, ChatGPT in the classroom in these types of ways?
Well, certainly we've been teaching large language models in our more technical degree program, as students need to learn how they work, and they need to understand the sort of probabilistic models that go with it. And now ChatGPT is there and incorporated in multiple languages, so there's some interesting research to see about the pattern of language in different countries, and therefore statistical probabilities that go with it. We also have students in digital arts and design, and I'm sure they're playing with DALL-E 2 and looking at what they produce as humans, the human creative piece, and if you like, the machine creative piece, and bringing them together in interesting ways. So that's another area. Our College of Education people have been using all sorts of technologies, robots and simulations, and they're looking at how to incorporate this into the teaching environment. So I think that, for example, AI can be very helpful in reaching students with various learning styles, particularly neurodivergent students. We just need to figure out what's the best way. How do we get students to learn? But there are many more ways to learn now, and you can have sort of the tutor assistant could be the AI along with the teacher. I just think there are many different ways in which we can incorporate the technology. We have an honors course in artificial intelligence. I taught in that course, actually. It was collectively taught by faculty from across the university, and mine was a little bit different. I taught international collaboration and competition, because as we evolve AI and as we're looking at policies for AI and country, the European Union has its regulation, its AI Act, and the White House puts out a whole bunch of things that in this country, how does that affect the way we think about and the way we incorporate technology? But we had people teaching all different aspects, ethics, machine learning. Students came and they had different professors in different weeks, and we taught them about different things. And it was really, because it was an honors course, a lot of conversation about what does this mean? What does it mean to us as humans? What does it mean to organizations? What does it mean to communities that we can use AI? And to some extent, if we allow models and artificial intelligences to make decisions for us, then we are responsible for the outcome. And I think that's an important piece that I would hope that we would get more people talking about, these societal impacts of the technology, because I think that's where the questions are. It's easy to talk about the technology itself, but most people don't spend a lot of time, especially technologists, don't spend a lot of time talking about these broader, dare I say, softer issues.
That kind of makes me wonder what you think higher education's role should be in in advancing research in AI and kind of exploring these issues? Because is there a responsibility there? Because if you're leaving it to the corporate world, that's going to be a completely different outcome, I think.
That's a great question. And, you know, to some extent, the advances in research in AI and in the enabling technologies, cloud computing, etc., have all come increasingly from the private sector because of the push for people to want to use these capabilities. But I do think there is a role for universities for advancing research in AI and to inform how the workforce might evolve. So I think we have a clear responsibility to communicate the positives and negatives of AI. We shouldn't let our own communities assume it's simple, it's all good, or it's all bad. Of course, the answer is much more complex. I think there are interesting areas of expansion for the universities to look into, as I say, the roles and responsibilities of the human and the artificial, depending on the application. And it does depend on the application. As I said, would you want your doctor never to look at you, but just to listen to whatever the AI tells it about you? Would you allow a surgeon to do surgery on you if he hadn't really looked at your health record and your scans and everything else? I think we wouldn't. I think we'd be a little bit more careful. But I also think we have to think also, everything's happening so fast with AI right now, and that's partly because it was developed in an open way. So I think one of the things, this very, very rapid evolution and deployment of AI, because everybody now wants in on this, right? Every group wants to be able to plug in to the large language models, and there's a risk in everybody plugging in indiscriminately, I think. But how will that affect us as humans? How will it affect our cognition, how we understand the world, our perception, and our ability to interact with technology, with each other, and with society in general? I think those are important factors. How can we ensure security and safety and privacy as we increasingly allow these technologies to create waves and waves of data and flows of data without regard to, oh my gosh, let's think about this for a minute, because it's there and it's out there, and in orders of magnitude that we probably have never fully expected in a long time. So I think that's it. And then I think universities can work to help form and facilitate the development of guidelines, guardrails, the policies and regulation and law. We had conceived a while back that we're so heavy into cyber. What we were talking about, we're doing cyber agriculture, we're doing cyber health. We have worked with the local law school on cyber law. We haven't really talked about AI health, AI agriculture, AI for law, and that's the same thing. It goes along everywhere. And then I think that there need to be ways in which developers of AI need to be able to build in or require what we call transparency, explainability, how does it work, although we can't always explain in complex systems, and then some level of accountability. So out of that comes, should we have, well, there's a group in the UK I just read last week that has decided that it's got groups of technologists and groups of educators at different levels are working to review various AI technologies, if you like, artificial intelligences would be the term I would use, for K through 12 schools in the UK. So they're going to look at those and assess a certain level of risk. These are the ones that seem to be okay, and these are the ones I would steer clear from, so that teachers don't have to make those decisions themselves. So I could see panels, I could see healthcare panels, I could see panels in different areas of healthcare, for example, or different areas of business trying to do this. We've also got sort of people on our campuses that can try things out, test things out, see how it can be used, how it can be abused. I think we should use that sort of population of young people to help test things out. We're sort of living labs, if you like. And what it would be good to do is to do that anyway, because our students are going to try and do it, right? They're going to try and break into systems. They're going to try and see, does it work or does it not work? But what we need to do is to make sure that they've looked at that carefully and they've understood that, have they been thorough? Have they got the right? Have they really tested this out appropriately? What other kinds of data or input could they have provided to the models? Does the model have bias? How do we avoid bias in models? And mostly until now, bias has occurred either completely in a thoughtless way or because we simply didn't have sufficient data. And now we're getting to the point with sensors all over the place that we're getting a lot of data. And so I see a research role for the universities. I see obviously the teaching role, and I think there is a role in helping participating in the conversation about policies and regulations.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Rhea Kelly, and this was the Campus Technology Insider Podcast. You can find us on all the major podcast platforms or visit us online at campustechnology.com/podcast. Let us know what you think of this episode and what you'd like to hear in the future. Until next time.